the way that her eyes looked, it looked like she had hope and like desperation in her eyes. I don't know how to explain it.
It's like the woman who presses through the crowd just to touch the hem of his garment.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Like Jasper. Today we're here to share some really awesome God stories and what he did in our lives over the summer. And whenever you're watching this, this is being recorded at the end of 2025 summer. And I also want to quickly say that neither Brittany or I are feeling our best. Brittany especially, she's battling a sickness. I'm just battling the leftover sickness with a cough. So if I'm coughing or if she's not full energy, that's why. But the Lord gave us this time together.
Yes, and we are just continuing to pray for the Lord to guide us about this podcast and when we air this and how it comes out and what the next ones are. We want to be obedient to that always. So if you're listening and you have been and you would like to join us in that prayer, we would really appreciate it because we have recorded several, but we really need to know what direction the Lord would have us to go in and just all the things. So that's our tagline, right? All the things.
All of them.
All the things. So we have done a few of these, the testimonies, because obviously that is so important. We talk about it in every single one that we do. But recently, 2 weeks ago now, you just returned. Sara went on a mission trip with her daughter to Peru. And I've only gotten to hear some of the stories because God just did so many things. That's really hard to sort of like box it up and hand it to you. But the Lord's been doing incredible things for our family and in my heart and just in my walk too over the summer. But for me, I was telling Sara before we started that although sharing the gospel is a huge passion, teaching is a huge passion, discipleship is a huge passion of mine, and supporting missions I am passionate about. But I haven't felt like the Lord's called me to go on any international mission. And I just think that the Christian body needs to hear that encouragement of how many things people are hungry for that we just sort of take for granted. That is so encouraging to us to keep the perspective of how blessed we are as a nation, how blessed we are as followers of the Lord in a free country and in a wealthy country, even at our worst, right? It's just not something that everybody has experienced, going to a whole other country, right, to share the gospel in a language that you don't speak. That's so godly. That's our phrase. That's so godly. I just want the world to hear a little bit more about that.
It was definitely a privilege and an honor and a joy to be able to go because there was definitely so much spiritual warfare that took place that, leading up to it.
Yeah.
And there was some fear that definitely set in. And there are some things that tried to stop us from going. So it really was such a huge honor, even the financial side, and that was an answer to prayer. Even before we went there, the Lord did bless us with having it 100% financed. But it took so many generous people that were willing to do that. Appreciate and so thankful for each one. It did take us about a year of fundraising too. So, that at multiple times I thought it wasn't going to be funded. And, my husband and I had to really talk about like, is this something we could financially afford if it doesn't get funded? And we felt like the Lord was going to provide and we were just going to have to trust him through it. And so, it was just like, there's so many different angles to it. It's not just a trip. It was like a year leading up to the trip and different things even before the trip, like how the Lord answered various prayers with all kinds of different things. But the trip alone was like, it feels so surreal. Like we've been preparing all year, and here we are, and so excited, and like it was such an honor. Like I don't even know how to explain it. It just feels like God allowed us to go on this, right? Like he could have chose anybody and he called us to do this. And it just felt like a huge honor and responsibility to go. Um,
Yes.
so yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I think anytime you share the gospel, there's that overwhelming sense of why would you ask me to
mhm.
be a co-laborer with you, God? Like, have you met me, you know, kind of thing. And it's just so sweet. It is always that precious, like, God, you chose me. My favorite, one of my favorite, this podcast is now encompassing two of my favorite scriptures. They overcame him by the blood of the lamb and the word of their testimony, and now you did not choose me. I chose you to go and bear fruit that remains, that whatever you ask in the Father's name, I will give. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, so, you know, thinking about that he chose us,
Mhm.
um, and called us and appointed us and put us in position. It's always so humbling.
Yeah.
Always so humbling. And yeah, and you're right when you're talking about the whole like year leading up. We've been praying with you over this and in preparation for it, and you were practicing your Spanish, and even just
Yeah,
that
and
is
Brittany, thankfully, Brittany's fluent in Spanish, so
it
she
was
was
so
very helpful. And man, there's some songs that we had to memorize, and I was apparently butchering it. I was saying like 12 instead of God, right? I think I was saying, how do you say 12 in Spanish? Dose.
dose.
Yeah, I was saying dose instead of Dios, right? Because Dios is God, right? So yeah, thankfully Brittany really helped because otherwise, who knows what I would have been saying. But I was there.
But you know what? If you just said it wrong, I feel like laughter is a great open door for the Lord. And either way, he would have we were praying for so long that the Holy Spirit would go before you and prepare
Yeah,
their hearts to receive
and he
that. And
did.
I just think that he did he always does that in ways that we didn't even ask for and couldn't even
For
have
sure.
imagined to ask for, much less what he provides. So I've loved every little tidbit that I've gotten, every little nugget, I'm like, oh man, we just need to share. So I think if well, you might have, the Lord might be leading you to a different jumping off point, but I think that the sort of the conditions that you were in is really relevant to the power of God there as well. So maybe, I don't know, whatever you think, but maybe at least sharing that at some point, what the conditions were like where you were at.
So we were kind of all over Peru. I don't even remember how many towns we went to, but there was a lot. We kind of were all over. Um, and Lima and Cusco, they're bigger cities, um, more wealthy cities, but it's still very different than the United
Impoverished.
States. Still
Yeah.
very impoverished. Still very. There was some nicer areas for sure, but there was also a lot of impoverished areas, and so those were kind of the bigger cities. Then from there, we went several hours away to several different villages. And these villages that we were in, the three main ones that we were in, Sukwani, Tinta, and Pitamarca, um, there's a lot of poverty in these. And there were some that were wealthier. And by that, I mean, like, they had, some of the people there had houses that were made out of like concrete or brick or something, but that was not as common. Probably more common was houses made out of mud, really, mud and straw. And I wonder if I should have had all these pictures pulled up before. I'll see if I try to find a picture what I'm talking about so you guys could see. But
We can
um,
share it after if you
oh,
can't
that's a
find
good
it.
idea. I could, yeah. But oh, here's one. So I'll see if you could we could zoom that in. I don't know if you can see. So they make these
Yeah.
out of brick. So it's mud, but it's made into brick, right? It's really incredible ingenuity, actually, how they do it. But it
Yeah.
basically, I asked, I was like, how do they do this? Like, I was so mesmerized. And they were saying how it's straw and mud together, and then they shape them into these bricks until they harden, and then they make bricks out of it. So most of the houses were made out of stuff like that. Then they either had, a lot of them didn't even have a roof, actually. Some of them just had tarps over it.
Mm.
Some were just kind of more exposed, and then some had roofs that were kind of made. I don't really know what they were made out of. I'm thinking maybe like hardened mud into shapes of almost shingles, layered on top of each other as a roof. But when you open the doors, because we did a lot of door to door ministry, knocking on the doors and stuff, a lot of the doors, when you open it up, is literally just the ground, like dirt.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so yeah, so it wasn't like there wasn't a foundation, you know. Now again, not every single house was like this. I don't want to make it sound like every single house was made out of this and every single house, but like a lot of them were. Um, and it's just really heartbreaking to see that. And you know, the children there, they didn't really have toys. If they had like one toy, it was very, very special. Um, and and they don't have like washing machines and stuff like that either. So, you know, they're washing, we saw all over the place in creeks and stuff, people down there washing their clothes and the creeks, which then those creeks, they have aqueducts. If you're familiar with what an aqueduct is, um, so it would be washing their clothes, and that same creek would bring the aqueduct water into these villages, which in turn were the same water that they would be drinking out of, and yeah, and bathing in and all that. So
Wow.
kind of full circle with all of that. But so very sad conditions, but it was also just their way of life. They don't know any different. It didn't necessarily feel sad to them. It was just how they lived their lives. But it's
Right.
very much just awakening. And it really, when we came back, both Alyssa and I, Alyssa's my daughter who went with me. And we went with our church. There was 20 of us that went, or 21 of us, I think there was, that went.
Mhm.
But Alyssa and I had a hard time when we came back. It took us
Mhm.
probably a good 4 or 5 days to like even fully begin to process. Like people were asking, you know, how was the trip? How was this? And we were so overwhelmed with coming back
Yeah.
because it's like we have all of our this stuff.
Yeah.
We have cars that we can go anywhere. Like we have carpet, we have a nice couch, we have our own beds. Like, and it was just like we couldn't even. I felt like we were really just having a hard time coming back.
Yeah.
Like our physical bodies were here, but mentally we weren't back. You know, and obviously we've lived here and in Canada. We've lived both the United States and Canada, very privileged countries.
Sure.
And so you think that coming back would just be like, oh, we're home, like this is all our stuff, but it wasn't like that. It was really hard to come back and like readjust to like normal way of life here. Like there, we couldn't drink any water unless it was bottled water, including brushing our teeth. We would have to use, you know, bottled water to brush our teeth because the water was not safe for drinking, and we couldn't eat any fruits or vegetables because they were washed in the water. And you know, so just like coming back, I remember we were like trying to figure out, like staring at our toothbrushes that night, like we're like trying to like think we could use this water, you know, just
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
but it really is an awakening and reminder. And it's not my first time going to a country that was similar to, or to like that. I've been in a couple, but it's just like you almost forget when you're
You
here.
do.
And like you hear about that, especially you hear about it a lot in Africa. I had never thought about that in Peru. That had never been in my mind thinking. I think about more of like the huts and stuff in Africa. So you hear about all these things, but like going and living among it for 10 to 12 days. I forget how long we were there. I know it's not that long, but it really is like,
No, it is.
it really is like, it affects you, right? And in a great way too, because it rehumbles you. You might think you go in humbled, or you might think that like, oh, I understand this lifestyle, but like you really don't until you're like there and you see it and you're living with them in
Yeah.
this, you know?
Well, and you
So
said you were saying that it was, you know, sad conditions, but to them it wasn't sad because this is their way of life. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, you know, we're so conditioned to, like right now, I have air conditioning back in my house. And that was like what I talked about with you for like the first 20
mhm.
minutes of our conversation. Like,
That's amazing.
oh, air conditioning. And, you know, my son's saying it's cold. And I'm like, be quiet. Don't talk. Don't say anything about it, because just not having air conditioning in my home was very, very hard. Right.
For
Like,
anyone who
that's,
doesn't know, Brittany lives in Florida. So
yeah.
imagine,
Oh, gosh. It's
yeah,
so hot. It's like
it's
100
dead heat of summer.
degrees.
So yeah.
Yes, in the morning. So all that being said, but really, to me, it isn't it's sad because we would love for them to have at minimum fresh water, right? Like, so
Mhm.
that in that way, but them not having anything and then you coming back from not having anything. I don't know. I didn't go on a mission trip when I went to Mexico. I was living there, but when I came back,
Mhm.
the amount of stuff felt
Mhm.
burdensome. It felt like
Mhm.
there's so much stuff everywhere and it's so unnecessary. And then you get back
Yeah.
into that frame of life. But I remember coming back and we had to walk everywhere. We didn't have a
Mhm.
car there. So we're
Mhm.
walking everywhere and we would like, you know, we went, I remember I was like, let's take this taxi to go to Walmart because here that's the cheapest place to get groceries. And that's like, where if you're trying to save money and we were on a budget. And I
Mhm.
remember finding out that was like the worst plan ever because for a lot of reasons. So we started going to the very tiny local market
Mhm.
and carrying everything back and having the big jugs of water. That was our water there too. So when I
Mhm.
came back to the States, I remember that instead of like I ordered food, which was still kind of weird, like you're saying,
Mhm.
coming back. And instead in our little town, my big butt didn't walk anywhere. When I came back, I did. I walked and I
Mhm.
was like, why am I still doing this? I have a
Yeah.
car. But it was like, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just, and I know in whoever's listening in different parts of the country and maybe different countries, it's not maybe not as much as a shock. But for our way of life, we do drive everywhere. We're not in New York. We have our own car. You have to have a car to survive here, kind of thing. And I don't know. I just think the sadness, when he says the poor in spirit,
Mhm.
the sadness is more not about their external conditions.
Yeah.
Um,
The
because
internal.
even that once yeah, they're internal, but they were ready. Most of
Mhm.
them were, I know not everybody, but most of them were
So
ready. Yeah.
so willing to listen.
And you
And
don't do that here. You don't go to the grocery store and be like, have you heard about Jesus Christ? Because you
yeah.
know what? In our grocery stores, that's the name people are saying when they stub their toe, right?
Yeah.
So I just think that that is, it's sad and that we would love them to have clean and solid and safe things. But I would not, and I know you weren't saying this either, but I would not love for them to have what I'm sitting around here with all this clutter and electronics and I wouldn't love for that. I wouldn't wish that on them, I guess is what I'm saying. I would wish that hungry heart that you got to encounter always,
Yeah.
always.
And that's exactly it. The people, they're so hungry for the word, so hungry. Like you would
Good.
talk to anybody, and most people were like, hey, do you have a minute for me to share about the Lord with you? And most people would be like, oh, sure. Like, also, I will say this too, which I love. I'm sure most people have heard of like island time, when you're on island time. Well, Peru, there's Peru time. And everyone's just on their own time. Like there, you might say VBS starts at 3 p.m. People might not show up to 4:30. Like everyone's just on their own time. There's no start time. You show up when you show up. So you say, "Oh, do you have a second?" Oh, sure. I don't have anywhere that I'm rushing off to. Like yeah, like what a way of life to just be like. I feel like here everyone's like, ah, stressed out,
Oh,
people talking or whatever, like trying to, like, come on, like, what are these people doing? Like, everyone's just so stressed out trying to get from one place to the other, and everyone's stressed out if they're 5 minutes late or whatever, and they're just like, "That's okay.
yes.
Yeah, which
Yes,
is also really
that was
refreshing.
a that it was and no longer is, but I've told you that before in our family when we would go, my husband's friends that are here would invite us to birthday parties and I would like, what time is the birthday party? He'd be like, I don't know, like 4. And so I'm like, all right, well, we need to leave it enough time to get there by 4 and it'd be time. And he's like, what are we doing? I'm like, they said 4. And he's
Right.
like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. Are we not saying the same thing? But it wasn't. It was like 4 is about the time where they're going to think about possibly getting the things maybe ready. So
Ready.
in case somebody
Uh-huh.
comes the next hour, there might be something prepared. You don't show up at the time they tell you. Don't do that.
Right.
They say,
Don't show up on time.
don't do that. Don't come at that time.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So that is so funny. It's yeah, sure.
It's funny how
the
different cultures are like that. Yeah.
I know
And
you went there prepared to share the gospel, but I feel like here in the States, if we were to be like, "Hey, do you have time for me to tell you about the Lord?" If they turn around and go, "Sure," we'd be like, "Okay, well, that like, oh,
yeah.
okay, well, all right, hang on, give me a
I wasn't
second. I wasn't
expecting you to say
expecting, yeah,
yes.
I wasn't expecting you to say yes." Oh, that's so funny, but it's true.
Yeah,
Anyways,
it is. It's so true, and it's so funny. But they really are like it was and I say this because I God prepare their hearts because we have been praying all year, Lord,
yes,
go before us, prepare the people's hearts, right? So I know that was a huge part. Like that was it. That not just a huge part. It like that was it. Like God had gone prepared, and we also prayed like we were doing prayer walking as we were doing door to door and street ministry too. Lord, like lead us where you would have us to go to the right people. Let our paths cross with the right people. But it was like people were so hungry that people were just getting saved left and right, left and right, left
so
and right.
good.
Yeah, I know, right? And I know that there's a different culture and stuff, but I really believe that it was God had gone before us. God
Oh
had prepared
yeah,
our
for sure.
hearts. God had led us to the right people. God had let our paths cross at the right time. Like it was all God, like there was none of it was not me, it wasn't any of my other teammates, it wasn't our interpreters, it wasn't just the culture differences, it wasn't any of that. It was like God, 100% God leading the way, moving in different ways, preparing hearts, speaking through us. That was the other prayer that we would be praying. Lord, speak through us. Let us have the right words that would speak to this person's heart individually. And it was just so precious. The first time I led someone to Christ in Peru, I was like, did that just happen? Like, that was so easy. Like, what? Like, really? We just met him 2 minutes ago and he's like, I want to give my life to Christ. Like, how? Like, how is this? Like, usually I feel like we like
You
months
gotta
of
convince
getting to
them.
know people and like becoming friends with them and being a light to them and then sharing the gospel. But like just walking up to a stranger and asking, hey, do you have a minute to talk? And then me sharing it, my testimony and sharing the gospel. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I want that. Like, I want to do that right now. Like, it was just so amazing. And that was happening constantly every single day throughout the entire time that we were there. It was like,
It'd be hard for me to come back here too.
yes, right? Yes. It was, yeah, very hard.
Yeah, you're walking daily in the Spirit, your whole day focused on the Holy Spirit,
That
guide
was
me,
it.
Lord, lead
Yes.
me. And then you come
So
back to
important.
flesh. Like,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
your whole day, unfortunately, once we get here, we want it to be that way. It should be that way, but it's not that way.
Well,
So,
that's what I kept thinking when I was there, like, this is what it's supposed to be like all the time,
yes,
you know?
yes.
And instead we get into like, oh, I have to, my kids have this sport and I have to go to work and we have this and I have to cook all this dinner and I have all this. And so like those are not bad things, but they
No,
start to consume our lives. They start to drag us away. And our life should be a 24-hour mission, not just when we go on a mission trip, So that was definitely a huge part of it, eating, sleeping, drinking, everything was like focus on the Lord, team meetings. What did God do in your life today? And how can I pray for you? And, morning devotion together and encouragement. Okay, we're going to go out and we're going to do this, like saturate it in it. And it's just absolutely incredible. And then just to see God answering all these prayers and going before us, and, letting us meet these people that we won't probably likely won't see them again until we get to heaven,
I was about to say, you'll see him in heaven. They're going to be like,
Yeah,
it's you.
yeah, I know. So it's just so incredible. And it was very encouraging, very heartbreaking and encouraging. And I feel like our lives were completely undone. Like we feel like there's things that you have like, oh yes, I'm on fire for the Lord and I do this, and you kind of feel like you have it all together, but then all of a sudden it's just like unraveled and you're like, whoa, like this is really
Yeah.
it. And so that's just kind of how it felt. And I mean, there were so many stories there. I don't even know really how to begin and share every single one. But it was just the Lord.
It
Um,
is. It is,
and
and
it
it,
was for all my teammates, not just Alyssa and I, right? Like all of our teammates were experiencing this,
yeah.
leading people to Christ and doing like, yeah, it was amazing.
Well, and that's that thing of like our lives are meant to be an experience with Jesus, not
Mhm.
this on a shelf Christianity kind of thing. And when you go on a mission trip, that's a concentrated mission trip instead of, you really are having to depend on the Lord, especially where you were. You didn't know the language at all. And I think probably, I know there was a ton of stories, but I think that the two favorite ones that I have are the language barrier one and the Alyssa one with the sucker. I think that
Okay,
or the
I'll
lollipop.
share
I
those
think
too.
that those
Yeah.
are so beautiful. So
Yeah.
beautiful.
So yes, I'll start with the lollipop. Why not? So Alyssa was going around giving all the children lollipops and inviting them to VBS. So basically, how the structure would work is, every morning we'd wake up, have breakfast, have a team devotion. Then we would go out and we would do door to door and street ministry. So we would either knock on doors and talk to people about the Lord, or just as we were going, people on the streets or in their markets. There's people selling markets and stuff. And then in the afternoon, then we would have lunch. Then we would do VBS, and we would lead a VBS. And then in the evenings, there was often like a soccer ministry going on, a men's ministry, a women's ministry, a marriage ministry. We
Wow.
did police ministry, just various things, right? So, and then of course dinner, and then prep for the next day. In the evenings, we'd be blowing up balloon animals because we were giving out balloon animals to the kids, which they thought was like the most amazing thing ever. But we would have to put together, anywhere, depends on, so like the Pitamarca VBS had over 200 kids. The Suquani,
Wow.
yes, massive. Suquani and Tinta, they had around like 45-ish kids probably. Um, which, by the way, remind me to circle back around to Tinta. All right. But anyway, so in the mornings while we were doing the door to door and the street ministry, Alyssa, anytime we saw a kid, she would, Alyssa's my daughter, she would be handing out lollipops and inviting the kids to VBS, and was like, okay, so first, hold on. Let me back up a little bit too, because this is so cute. I just have to say how adorable this was. So Alyssa is blonde, kind of a golden blonde hair, very gold, actually. It's a very golden. It's not just like a white blonde, it's a gold blonde. And she has green eyes, right? And so
Which is
in
so
Peru, most
rare.
kids had never seen anyone without dark hair, dark eyes. So they were already like mesmerized. A
Yeah.
kid, blonde hair, green eyes, so it was so cute. I'll have to post pictures, but there's pictures of
That
like this like mob of kids surrounding Alyssa, just like petting her hair. They were like, photo. They wanted pictures with her because she had golden hair and green eyes. There's like pictures of them pointing at her, like, it was so cute. It was adorable. So anyway, so she's passing out suckers and inviting them to VBS via the translator because, like Brittany said, there's a language barrier there. Um, and so she goes at the end. So it was time, we were supposed to meet back at a certain location at a certain time for the team, to take a bus back to where we were having lunch. And so we're meeting there, and we're still waiting on like one other team. So we're standing there, everyone's just chatting, everyone's sharing stories, all the people that gave their life to Christ. We're all excited. Da, 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 da. Well, Alyssa, she's standing there and she sees this lady walking back. They call it a manta, which I'm not sure if you know what that is, but it's basically just this wrap. We
Yeah.
call them, what do we call them? Moby wraps or whatever. Here,
Oh,
that's kind of like that, but they put it on their back, right? And they like wrap up in it.
right.
And their little kids are in the back, and they're wear their kids in those until they're a couple years old, like not just babies. So there's this one lady walking by, and I think her son, or I don't even know if it's a boy or a girl actually, was walking by, had probably like a 3-year old maybe in her manta. And so we're all standing around chatting, sharing all these stories about what God had did. We were all so excited. So we were kind of distracted with that, and not with the people walking by so much. But Alyssa spots this lady and she like runs over. She didn't have an interpreter with her. It was just like she just did it on her own, runs over, and she hands the lady a sucker, and she doesn't speak the language. So she points and says, Nino, to the child. Like that's how you say child in Spanish, which Brittany could probably pronounce it way better than me. But she's like, and so the lady's like, gracias or whatever. And she takes it. Well, then one of the ladies who was part of our team, but she also spoke Spanish. She wasn't officially an interpreter, but she helped with us with translating and stuff. She spots Alyssa and runs over to say, oh, so Alyssa had stopped this lady. Alyssa's, saying, sucker or whatever. And the other lady comes over. Her name's Isabel. And she was like, we would love to invite your child to VBS or whatever. Starts talking to her in Spanish. And the lady's like, what's VBS? And then Isabel shares, literally within like 1 minute, Isabel had explained, well, maybe it wasn't 1 minute. It happened so fast. Maybe it was like 2 or 3 minutes, but it felt like it happened that fast.
Yeah.
Isabel shares what a VBS is, um, and then like why we're doing it, like the gospel. And the lady was like, "Oh, well, I want that. Can I become a Christian?" And gave her life to Christ. So it was such a precious thing because if Alyssa had, and we were also distracted, if Alyssa hadn't stopped her, and then if Isabel hadn't gone over there and noticed it on her own, that lady could have just walked right past us. And there she was, just hungry for the Lord, just happened to be walking right past us. So that was just a really sweet, precious story. And then the other one that you're talking about with the language barrier. So in Peru, they speak Spanish, obviously. And they had their own kind of slang of Spanish. So
Yeah.
it is mostly Spanish, but there were some things that were more than just like traditional Spanish as people would know here.
Mhm.
But they also speak a language called Quechua. And so some of our translations, we would have English to Spanish translation, or sometimes we would have English to Spanish to Quechua to that person who would then speak back to the Quechua, who would speak to the Spanish translator, who would then speak to us, right? So
Wow.
sometimes, yeah, it was like a lot. Um, well, at one point we went to Tinta. So this is where I was going to come full circle back. And I was like, remind me to tell you about this. So Tinta was a little village that it was really an unreached to the gospel village. So there has never been the gospel actually presented there. There's other religions there, but not the gospel. They had not been ever. There had never been, as far as we have ever known or heard about.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was amazing, and this was our first time. So our church has been going to Peru since 2019, so for 6 years,
Wow.
and different parts and areas. But this was our first time going to Tinta. Had recently, our pastor had our missions pastor who was leading the group had found out about it through another pastor in Peru who was our connection there, and he told us about it. So, anyways, that's why we went to Tinta. That was kind of full circle. So that was amazing to be a part of that, like first people group to go in and share the gospel with this community, with this
So
village.
awesome.
Um,
You're
yeah,
saying it
it
like,
really
oh,
was.
and it was so awesome. I'd be like, and then.
No, for real. It was so God. Um, pardon me. So, anyways, it was super exciting to just go in there. And we did end up doing a VBS there as well, which was really cool. It's the first time ever the kids in that village had ever experienced anything like that. It was amazing. That was a whole other thing. But all that to say is in Tinta, they mostly speak Quechua. And we didn't have enough Quechua translators. So we broke up into groups. So a lot of them do speak Spanish, but they also speak a lot of Quechua there. So our group was our interpreter Sergio, which okay, so cool story about Sergio. I'm just getting like all geeked out
I
excited.
know. I'm
I feel
like,
like
yes.
early stories, like this story is like connected to this story, which is all
That's how God
right.
does things. I know
Uh-huh.
I can't ever tell the story because I'm like, wait, I have to go back 6 weeks
Right,
before that because
explain this
God was
part
doing this thing
otherwise.
that come, yeah.
What was just name? Like Sergio and Louisa? Like what? Okay,
Yeah.
so Sergio and Louisa, and their son, Ashael, they live in Peru. They live in a town called Urabama, something like that, which is right next to Cusco, just for reference, which is about 3 hours away from where we were in Tinta. But so Sergio is a Christian, incredible testimony, like incredible testimony. Actually, I would love to have him on the podcast. That would be super cool if we ever did
Oh,
that.
that would be so
That would be so
cool.
cool. Yeah, and his wife would be so cool. So Sergio, awesome testimony. That's a whole other thing. And his wife, also strong believer. They live in Peru. He's a welder, but he is like a missionary on the side, a translating missionary. So anytime missionaries come into Peru, he's the guy that they hire to come and be their translator. And so that's his mission field. But like by trade, he's a welder. Anyway, so we got our group had him and his wife. It was kind of also such a God story. And I say all this because it's really relevant to what's happening in Tinta that I'm about to explain. His wife, Louisa, also amazing, wasn't going to come. At first, she was. And then she's also in school, so she's a student full time, and she was going to have classes, and she had a speech that she was going to have to give, and all these things. Plus, they have Ashael, which he's only 2, so they full time mom and all the things, and they had a dog, and they weren't sure what to do with the dog, and all the things. So it was just going to be Sergio that came to be with us for these 10 days or whatever. But then she was like, "Well, maybe I'll come," and then she was like, "No, I'm not. I'm going to stay back." Well, then the last day, so then Sergio called and was like, "Oh, my wife and child's not able to come. It would just be me." And then at the last minute, the night before, she's like, actually, I want to come. I think I'm going to come. And so he called and he was like, actually, can't they come? Like, is it too late to add them? And so they're like, yes, of course, bring your wife and child. So fast forward, Louisa wasn't even going to come. Last second, she was. And so my translator, it was me and Alyssa, and then Sergio and his wife and their 2-year-old son, Ashael. That was our team. And it was our team all week. So the 5 of us were together all week. He was mine and Alyssa's personal translator. Louisa, his wife, didn't really know much English at all. She was learning, but she was not a translator, but she was there, right? Praying with us and talking to people and witnessing to people on her own in Spanish. Okay, so fast forward to Tinta. That was our team. They did not speak Quechua. And we're going door to door in Tinta to this unreached people group. And we come across this lady who was older, maybe like 80s, maybe older, maybe 90s. She was definitely older, but she was like, like our alma mom, like older, but like powerhouse, right? She was carrying a load of stuff on her back. Like she was, working, and asks, hey, do you have a minute to talk? Finds out she doesn't speak Spanish. She speaks Quechua. So then on our little tags, there's John 3:16 in Spanish and in Quechua. So Sergio picks up his card and he's like, all right, I'll just read her John 3:16 in Quechua. So he picks it up and he's reading it and he's hoping that his pronunciation is good, right? She gets most of it. I think there might have been a little translation there too, but then he writes down her number. He realized there's a translation error, and we cannot communicate. So he gets her phone number, and he's like, as best as he can, communicates. We're going to have someone who speaks Quechua call you, because she seemed really interested and she wanted to talk, but there is this big language barrier happening. So we say thank you, and we start walking on. There's this translation error, right? We can't communicate, and so we got Sergio got her phone number. He was able to communicate enough for that. Move on, and we start walking down, and she starts following us, right? She's walking down with us, but she was also like heading that way to begin with. So we just kind of thought, oh, we're all kind of walking down this road together. So but she starts talking, and she's speaking in Quechua, and we can't understand anything, and she's speaking like going on and on and on. So we look over at her and we're acknowledging her, and she like locks eyes on me, like complete, and she knows that I'm the one who knows no Spanish, that I know nothing, that I'm just like the English speaker, because I tried translate, like I was talking, Sergio was translating, right?
Oh,
I look over and I'm acknowledging her, whatever, we all are, not just me. And but somehow she just like locks eyes on me, and she starts getting like really intense, and she's talking in Quechua, and I'm trying to follow like her body language and her facial expression to base how my response facial expression is,
right.
right. So like I'm not smiling because she just looks really intense, and she's talking, and I could see that it was like very important, the way that her eyes looked. It looked like she had hope and like desperation in her eyes. I don't know how to explain it.
It's like the woman who presses through the crowd just to touch the hem of his garment.
Yes. Ooh, I hadn't even thought about that. I love that. Yes. It was like that. So it was like I think when Sergio read 3:16, she got enough to realize that we believed in God. And so it was like, I believe that you've been sent here and I have to tell you something, right?
Yeah,
It was like
you're
that
my
kind of
lifeline.
like desperation. Like I know there's a translation issue, but I just have to say it anyways. Like it was like that. So she's like intently staring at me, like not hardly even blinking, just like staring, and like saying all these things, and her eyes start to tear up, and I'm like, I just start praying in my mind, not out loud. Lord, we don't know what she's saying. Open up Sergio and Louisa's understanding to understand what she's saying, because they didn't speak Quechua either, but they were able to say like one or two words,
Sure.
like how I speak in Spanish, like a few words here and there. That's kind of how their Quechua was, right? And I'm like, Lord, open up, help them to understand what she's saying. Just give them this understanding as to what she is speaking about. I'm praying, and I'm listening, like without understanding, and I'm just looking at her and like acknowledging her back, and her eyes are getting teary, and she starts having a tear run down her face, um, and I'm also, so I'm not just praying about her, the language barrier, but also just for her and her heart, because I could see there's something deep going on. And Louisa out of nowhere was like, I understand what she's saying. She didn't know Quechua at all. And
Somebody
Sergio,
I know does.
right? And Sergio was like, what did she say? Like, what happened? So he was able to, so Sergio himself was also able to understand some things more than he thought that he did. He was like, wow, I actually understood a few things. But Louisa was able to understand almost everything. Now, she wasn't able to, well, she did actually. I was going to say she couldn't really communicate a whole lot back, but she did actually. She did say a couple things. But basically, what had happened was that was on a Tuesday. On the previous Saturday, her husband had been hit by a car and he was in the hospital in Cusco, dying. And he had had collapsed lungs and he was going to have a lung surgery. And she desperately wanted prayer, and she didn't really know what all to express as much as like, this is happening and I don't know what to do and I'm scared and I'm sad and like what, like all the things, right? And so that's what she had said. They didn't know Quechua. I didn't know any Quechua, right? But the Lord opened up Quechua's mind, or Louisa's mind, to understand the Quechua, and it was like the most like mind blowing thing ever. So yeah, we were able to pray with her.
Awesome.
There obviously there's still that language barrier there, but then Louisa was able to talk to her, and then we had someone who did know Quechua able to call her on that phone number that we had collected, and reach out and minister her to her. But it was like, wow. And Sergio was like, I didn't know my wife spoke Quechua. And Louisa was like, I didn't know I spoke Quechua either. And I was like, well, I actually was praying that y'all would understand Quechua as she was talking to us. And I think that's why. And they're like, oh my goodness, wow. So it was just like a really cool God thing. Um,
Such a cool God thing.
it
Such a
was, it
cool.
was, it was totally a God thing. Like it was
Like,
100%.
I remember that
Yeah.
the prayer, I told you this already, and I told you that day that the prayer the Lord put on my heart was to pray that
Mhm.
you would be able to understand and speak in another language, that there wouldn't be a language barrier. And obviously, that's not how the Lord, exactly how the Lord saw fit to do it,
Mhm.
but it really is what the heart of what it was. Like
Yeah.
that prayer, and then that you were thinking about that right then, like, I know that I can't translate this, but God can. I just love that.
Yeah.
And knowing that
I know.
he can,
So,
that is
mhm.
part of the Holy Spirit's job, is to help lead you into all truth, right? So
Yeah.
I just think that's so cool. And
Yeah.
what a huge for that woman too, because I can just imagine her staring at you
Uh,
and
I keep picturing her face, and I don't know what's happened to her husband or the story there. But I've just continued to pray for her and her husband
yes.
and that whole thing because
Yes.
I don't think I've ever seen someone's eyes look like that before, like so full of hope and desperation at the same time. And like she knew I could not speak Spanish, let alone Quechua. And yet it was like she had locked in on me. And I think the Lord did that because he would knew that that would press something on my heart. If she was talking to them, I would probably assume, oh, they understand they're having a
Yeah.
conversation.
Right.
Right? But because she was locked in on me and I didn't know anything, that it pressed me to say, Lord, open up their minds to understand. And he did. And I think because she was focused on me, they were able to focus in on, as opposed to watching her facial expression, they were able to focus in on hearing auditorily, as opposed to like being distracted, like, oh, like she's looking really sad, or she's,
Right.
like, I don't know. I just think all of it was God, and it was amazing.
And
It
I
was,
think too that like the Lord could have given you the same understanding. I know that's not what you were
mhm,
praying, but I think because Louisa hadn't planned to come in the
mhm,
last minute, obviously the Lord wanted to do something in her heart too.
yeah,
And he always has such bigger plans. So I
yeah,
feel like that moment for her too, for whatever reason that she didn't feel like she needed to go and then changed it. Like I pray that Lord cultivates that in her heart and
yeah, he
in
did.
her mission and her plan,
Mhm,
her calling, all the things.
yeah,
Um,
totally.
because he could have
Actually,
just
she's gonna
given you
play
the
a big
under.
role in multiple areas. And I told Sergio, I was like, God definitely wanted her there, and it was the enemy that was trying to keep her away because it's like
Absolutely.
there was a little boy who got sick one night, and Ashael, their son, had been sick a few days prior, and she had happened to go get some medicine for him that he only needed that one little bit, and then he was fine. But it was the same kind of medicine that this one little boy needed, and she happened to have it. with her, even though we were in Tinta at that time, where we were staying in Suquani, which is like 45 minutes away. For some reason, she didn't leave it back where we were staying. She had it with her, even though it was days before that Ashael had felt sick, and she had that and was able to help this little boy. And just multiple different things like that too, where also in Tinta, we were able to get into this room where we were able to do VBS. We did it in the main plaza, but also in this room, and it was filthy. And we're trying to set up chairs and do all these things, and there was sweet Louisa, who was just over there. She had found a broom and she was just sweeping it all up. It was like, I was like, she has been such a little blessing, like over and over and over. It was precious. Like, I loved them. Both Alyssa and I cried when we had to leave Sergio and Louisa and Ashael. We're like, they're family now. Like, that was probably one of the hardest things, was like leaving them behind. And then sweet little Ashael, they were teaching him English, and he learned how to say Alyssa's name while we were there. And it was like the cutest, sweetest thing. I have a video of Alyssa playing with him, and he was like, Alyssa. And I was like, oh, it was so precious, like everything.
You
Yeah.
have to share these videos. I know you made a video on YouTube that I think that the world should see because it's beautiful. So we just, even if you don't share the whole thing, I think you share the whole thing. But if you don't want to, definitely share that little sweet video
Yes.
because
It's
it's
only like
so
30
good.
seconds long, so I could totally share that one without
Yeah,
torturing everybody for these
it's
long,
not
long
torture, you weirdo. It's not torture. That is so beautiful. Like my whole heart. I
videos.
just feel so. Anyways, just all the ways that we need to wake up. We just got to wake
Yes.
up.
Well, and I have a couple other quick stories. These are not nearly as long as those. And then I really want you to share your things too. But one was just like the spiritual warfare that was taking place.
No
So
doubt.
there's high altitude. We were anywhere between 12,500 feet to 14,200 feet above sea level, extreme high altitudes, 2.5 to 3 miles above sea level. So the highest altitude I've ever been in, right? Like, there's not even altitude in anywhere in North America that's high. Like, it was extremely high. So lots of people were getting sick from that um, on our team, and including my own daughter who fainted. Did I even tell you that?
No, you didn't tell me
Oh, okay. Well, that's a whole other story. I'll
that.
share that later. But less people were getting sick. That's kind of my whole point with this, the spiritual warfare that was taking place. I was getting sick, but not from the altitude. Ellis and I thankfully had been given good counsel to take altitude sickness medicine before we went. So we were actually fine altitude wise, except I couldn't breathe. I was definitely suffering with, with breathing. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, but I did get sick from the food. And for the first like 4 or 5 days, I was having major stomach issues from
Yes.
this food. And it mostly was happening like all night long, which would obviously make me really tired during the day. The Lord blessed me with energy that I can't even explain.
That's
Um,
so
but
awesome.
every morning it was like, I don't think I could go today because my stomach issues are being really bad right now. And it was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I would just sit there and I'd pray and be like, Lord, if you want me to go out for the street ministry in the morning, help my stomach to settle. And he did every single time. And it was those days whenever I was having the worst stomach issues that that the Lord brought me to people where I was able to lead them to Christ. And it was like, wow, like talk about spiritual warfare. And other people too, of course, were getting sick for in different ways too. And I just felt like there is a lot of spiritual warfare. One poor man on our team had to stay back a lot of the time, but it was really precious because he was praying for us from the
Yeah.
hotel room. He was like our prayer spiritual person that he couldn't be out there most of the days. He had to stay back and be on oxygen.
And he was
And
covering
so,
you guys.
yeah, but he was covering, that was like a sweet ministry for him. And so, but there was just like different areas that there is attempted spiritual warfare. And thing that I just keep praying about. We didn't really get to talk to this person or these people, but we did go to two witch houses. So the witches there have certain symbols on their houses, and so we specifically were like, well, let's go and talk to them. Like, we're not afraid, we're covered by the blood. And so we did, and they didn't answer, but we did leave gospel tracks. And so I'm just praying, for those whole situations. And it's just a very different world there. It's also winter, so it's freezing. We had to wear
I was
winter
about to
gloves.
ask you, was it hot?
It was
Oh,
freezing. It was so cold. It was so cold. Yeah, it was
well,
cold because it's winter. Like it's summer here, but it's winter there, and it was cold. Now in the afternoons, it did get warm. It was like in the 60s in the afternoons, but at night it would drop to like the 20s, and there's no heater or anything, right? So everything's like concrete floor, concrete walls in the hotel, so it felt extra cold. So, anyways, those were kind of my last two little. I really have so many more, but those were my last the witch houses and the health spiritual warfare stuff. I just thought God, how God orchestrated all that. But I did
yeah.
want you to share your stuff because you have a really cool story that happened.
I think I'm just soaking up the goodness of what you've been sharing because even that, um, yeah, just the sicknesses, but then that you have somebody covering you in prayer. I'm sorry, I'm really uncomfortable in this chair.
Yeah, you're
Um,
fine.
I just love that. I love the covering of it. And honestly, I just can't, like, I keep thinking about the woman with the issue of blood and her just like pressing through to the crowd and then like that hope and desperation. Anyways, and that's real life, like you. And I think too, I do think what you said, like she was looking at you so you could be pressed to pray because he wanted to do something with Louisa and all that too. That's what I think. But
Yeah.
I also think because like you have the Lord and you exude the joy and the hope of the Lord. It's very evident in your eyes. We talk about eyes all the time. And then you also have that blue in your eye. So I feel like, yeah, she has this a half of her eye is blue. It's like the same color blue as my eye, and the brown is
Yeah.
the same color brown as our other cousin. It's really fun. Anyways,
It's fun.
that was totally not necessary, but I felt like I didn't wanted to share that. But I just think how mesmerized, like I feel like that would have been when you don't have she didn't have a god, right?
Mm.
She doesn't have the God, but she probably didn't even have, maybe she had a God, but it's a worthless God. To
Mm-hmm.
see somebody walk up in the power and joy and love, I mean, that is magnet. That's like, you're drawn to that. And then to look at you in the eyes, and even if you have brown eyes, your brown eyes are not like their brown eyes. So there's just this like light that comes from you that I imagine what the hope you actually were seeing was the reflection of that you were giving her that hope. Like, I don't think that she probably had much hope other than, wait a second, let me get this word out to you. And I just, yeah. Anyways, that's so good. Okay. um, so I've been on a very different but same sort of journey just communing with the Lord, spending time with the Lord, setting aside. I always spend time with the Lord, but this has been just kind of a little bit of a different practice of um just getting quiet and asking the Lord to show me, places in my heart that I've learned in my goings in my Christian walk that you can agree with lies, and when you agree with lies, they have the power to torment you, and you might not even, realize that. We talked about that in our spiritual warfare podcast, but that was something that as I was talking to the Lord, I'm like, hey, Lord, I was being quiet and I was inviting him in. And I'm like, Lord, show me where I've made agreements with the enemy about anything in my life that would
Right.
give them the authority to torment me or and to lie to me and to do whatever, because you died for me to have all authority. It's a
Right.
lie. I don't want to give in to the lie. So as I'm praying, there was this vision of my dad's hand. And for everybody who doesn't know, my dad passed away 11 years ago now, and he died in our home. And I came in just as he was passing, and I was able to hold his hand as he died. And I was not a believer at that time. Okay, that's the short version. So, my dad's hands, I've always loved my dad's hands. And when I think about him, that's one of the things, and his laugh, his booming smile, like all
Yes.
those things. But his hands were always very special. Um, they were just big and strong, and something about that. So this vision of my dad's hand came, but my hand was covering his hand like this.
Mhm.
And it immediately, for anybody who's a Christian who's never experienced this, I I feel like I want to say this, that the Lord does give people different gifts and visions and dreams and things. So I was not like physically somewhere. It was all a rapid, almost like a movie playing, almost like that kind of, but not
Yeah.
really. I don't know how to explain that. And my
Yeah.
eyes were open and I wasn't seeing it. I was seeing it in my mind. I know that might not
Right.
make sense
Yeah.
if you've never experienced that, but that's what it was like. So I see my dad's hand and my hand, and immediately he takes me back to the bedroom where my dad was dying and where I was holding his hand, and I
Mhm.
wouldn't let go of it because it was keeping the warmth there.
Mhm.
Um, because he'd already passed away. And
Mhm.
so he took me to that where it was my hand on his hand holding it like that. And then to the little church where we had his memorial service, and my husband had taken my son Jet, who at that time was 17 months old, had taken him outside, and Jet was talking to what we made the agreement was my dad. And he, he was talking to something, and we were like, it's my dad. It's this sweet little thing. My dad's watching over me, right? Fast
Mhm.
forward to, we had picture on the wall of my dad, the collage that was actually at the memorial that I made of my dad, and every picture I had of my dad basically in this giant collage. And my son would go up and he would look at the picture and he would talk to him. And so I
Mhm.
was like, oh, he's talking to my dad. And then he fast forwarded me to this other moment where we passed by where my dad used to work, but when my son was born, my dad wasn't working there. So there was no physical way for him to know that my
Mhm.
dad worked there. So we definitely were like, oh, my dad, he's sending us a message.
Mhm.
He's watching over us. And I don't want to step on anybody's toes when I say this. So um but I am going to say it because it's true. That's not true. There is not anybody watching over you, right? And so that's hard because as Christians we want to believe these little sweet things, but there's the spiritual realm, but it's not your loved one. It's
Yeah.
either the demonic or from God. And so the Lord was like, you have to break agreement that that was your dad. And when I look back on it now, of course, like we talked about, the enemy's not going to wait for you to get through mourning to attack you, right? And I
Right.
wasn't a believer, so it was very very easy to attack
Right.
me. I had no frame of reference for anything. I thought this was this sweet thing. And so I was like, Lord, I just renounced the lie that that was my dad. That is not my dad. That was not from him, and I just released that to you. And as soon as I did that, I said the whole thing without crying. Aren't you proud of me? I just got to
Thank
hear
God.
um the vision was my dad's hand,
Mhm.
uh but instead Jesus's hand was underneath. It was like he had reached out and my dad grabbed his hand, and there was so much peace and healing in it. uh there's so much that the Lord did through that, but really just knowing like you're holding on to something that's not real, something
Mhm.
that you want to comfort you that's not real, but the truth is so much more, right? Like it's
Mhm.
so much more comforting than the
Mhm.
thought that my dad could be watching us but not talk to us.
Mhm.
He's I'm going to see him again with the Lord, and just that, like, in my vision with my hand was on top. Oh, look at that. Oh, sorry.
You're
I didn't
good.
remember I had makeup on. Anyways, my hand was on top of my dad's hand, but in the vision with Jesus, my dad's hand was on top of Jesus's hand as he had taken it out. And it was just so precious because I, of course, mourn my father, and I will. I've talked about him a bajillion times, even on here. If you've watched one podcast, you've probably heard me talk about him. But when you align yourself with an enemy, you just open yourself up to torment, and it's torment that you might not even realize, and it might not even seem to go with that.
Mhm.
But the healing and freedom from that was just it was just so precious. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's my, yeah,
And
that's my,
a couple things that you and I had talked about when you shared that with me was like you were desperately hanging on, like you did not want to let go of your dad's hand because that was the last time, right? Like he was
yeah, they had to
passing
make,
passed, and it was like I can't let go. You were gripping on for desperation for as long as possible, right? And
yeah,
that's like that vision too is like, and then it's like release like into God's hand, which is
yes,
eternal. You don't have to hang
yes.
on forever. Like it is eternal and you will be with him, and now God's got that hand, and that to me was like so precious. And I mean, hands are significant in the Bible too, because Bible talks over and over and over about the righteous right hand,
Yeah.
um,
Sit at my
and
right, he's at the right hand of the Father.
yeah, the right hand, and like even the nail pierced hands and everything too. Like,
And
um,
that was there in his hand, the vision of his
oh wow,
hand. What was really cool was like, it was my dad's hand, which
hmm
is very familiar. Like I can imagine it right now, right?
hmm
But I've never physically seen Jesus's hand,
hmm
but it was also familiar. It was like I knew,
you knew, yeah, you didn't
yeah.
have to say it, you
And it
knew.
wasn't just because of the scars. I mean, yes, but it wasn't that. It was the same familiarity. Like if I saw your hand in a picture, I would know your hand. I just would because I'm a weirdo like that. But I knew his hand like I knew his hand, not like,
Mhm.
oh, it's a scar, so it's Jesus. It was like, oh, that's Jesus's hand holding
Right,
my dad's hand, and it was
right.
so, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
all of that, and I was holding on to that desperately. So,
Mhm.
the healing too was not just breaking that agreement, but it was that
Mhm.
um I take a lot of false burden on myself, even in mourning, like the burden of an absent father,
Mhm.
like that by itself, and just knowing like my dad is with my heavenly father by itself is
Mhm.
enough, but to see it like that, and I already knew that and believed that, but at
Yeah,
that time I believed the things that a lot of people believe, and
right. You
it
weren't
was
a
just very
believer at
free.
that time either, so
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
wasn't. Yeah, not at all. So yeah, and I will say this other one. This one's I'll go faster, and I won't cry.
No, just take your
Uh,
time.
it's all been a part of this journey, and I will just say that it's this thing called the pause app, where it's just a concentration of pausing to be with the Lord. It's one of
Mhm.
those things that helps you because you're, at least if you're like me, if you're still, your mind's doing this, where this is just like there's nice music playing in the background, you can actually like be quiet and be still. And that day I don't think that I haven't shared this. No, I haven't. If I have, you're about to hear another story. If you've already heard it, it's still beautiful.
Right.
But I was trying to focus and be present with the Lord and just give him time. But my brain just would not cooperate with me.
Mhm.
It was like going off to whatever I had to do and thinking about all the
Right.
things. I'm like, no, 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 Lord,
Mhm.
help me just to be still and to be quiet. If anybody else can sympathize with that, if you ever do that in your prayer time, that's what it was like. And about that time, my little Ruby, the one that came in, I don't know if we'll be able to edit it out. If we did, then disregard what I'm saying. But earlier, my daughter came in, my tiny little 5-year-old, at this time. She came in to my room where I was sitting, and she said, where can I sit? Or where can I go? And I was like, right here. I want to squish you up. That's something we say
Yeah.
in our family. Want to squish you up, right? Like just
Right.
cuteness. So
Yeah.
she crawls up in my lap, and I am like in this, I don't know, you might not do this because you're not as touchy-feely as me, but in our family, we don't have healthy boundaries. So I pick her up. She's not small. She's 5 and she's a
Mhm.
tall 5-year-old. So just everyone picture that who doesn't know me. She's wears like a 7 clothes. Okay. So I pick her up and I try to like, hold her like a baby because she's
Yeah.
my baby. So I like wrap her leg around me and she's like
Right.
kind of smiling, half awake, half asleep. And so I'm like, just loving on her like you do your baby. Like I'm brushing
Yeah.
her hair back and kissing her face and all that. And she she's happy, but all of a sudden she's like wants to wiggle up and go. And I like hold her and I was like, wait, I'm not done yet. And she smiled and rested back into me. And immediately God was like, that's what it is. You come and you stay for a moment and you wiggle away, and I'm not done yet. And that was so sweet to me because it was not about how changed I am in his presence. It was about God the Father wanting to squish me up, wanting to spend time with me, that like love
Yeah.
of a father that I think we forget and are sometimes deceived,
Mhm.
you know, by our own flesh and just
Yeah.
yuckiness and the enemy, that like he's a dad, right? Like, and we
Mhm.
can come to him and cry. There's a reason why it says Abba Father.
Yeah.
You know, it's that
Mhm.
intimacy,
Yeah.
like daddy, papa, whatever the sweet term you call your
Mhm.
dad, daddy-o, whatever you call your
Yeah.
dad. Maybe you don't have that with a father, but that was what he was telling me. Not like,
Mhm.
I wanted you to listen. I wanted to do something with you. Like, I wanted to show you that.
Yeah.
No,
I want
I
you to
just
show
wanted
you
to
that I love you.
yeah, I wanted to squish you up. I'm not done
Mhm.
yet. And man,
Yeah.
for a mother heart and a daughter heart, I was like, okay, God. And I was able to be, you know, still, because yeah, we need that. We're his children. You don't realize how much you need to be
Yeah.
loved on by the Father, where you don't even ask, you're not asking him for anything. You're just
Yeah.
yeah, so it was so good, and God has
Yeah.
always used my children to help me to understand, because 'cause I'm thick-skulled,
He
and
does
so
that.
he's like yeah, he
I
does,
Yeah.
he
I love
does,
that.
and
I feel like as a parent, I could understand things in a way that I couldn't have understood before I was a parent.
I'm not sure, I always say this, the culmination of my dad dying, which was
Mhm.
every solid thing I had kind of wiped out, for me and for my mom, because my mom is a huge, like, presence in my life, but for
Mhm.
us, my dad made everything okay.
Uh-huh.
That and then on the heels of I just become a mother,
Mhm.
all of a sudden you're in uncharted territory of like,
Mhm. Yeah.
okay, hold on, what do I do now? And I think that, you know, having a son and losing my dad is the place my heart had to be to actually really receive Jesus. Um,
Mhm.
so I
Wow.
definitely know that I will do not understand God's love for me fully when I compare it to my love for my children, because even it's mine is flawed and his isn't, but it
Yeah.
really does
It helps you get a hint of it.
just a glimpse, even just a glimpse is more than you can even
Comprehend.
yeah, you can't even
Yeah.
sit in it. You could sit in it for the rest of your life and still not be able to absorb how beautiful
Yeah.
uh how beautiful that really is.
Yeah.
And I
It
always think about it for people who don't have dads or have
is.
had dads who really cause them harm.
Mhm.
You and I have wonderful fathers, had wonderful fathers, and so I have friends in my life though that had absent fathers or had fathers who were not kind to them. And
Mhm.
I think about how beautiful it is to me who had a loving father, a present father, a building up father, how
Mhm.
beautiful it is to me, but how beautiful it is. I long for that for anyone who's never experienced that on earth.
Yeah.
I pray that you would just open your heart to
Yes.
receive that that kind of love,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
you know, mother too, but father is a separate thing for a daughter, I think. Anyways, neither
Yeah.
here nor there. But yeah, those are some
Yeah.
of the sweetest.
Those
Some of
are
the
so good. Those are so tender and like again, and I know I said this to you earlier, not on the podcast, but just earlier that like these things are just again another proof of like how personal the Lord is. You
so
know, like
personal.
and he knew how to speak to you and he knew what you needed and he knew how to show you love and right and like he does that individually to each of us and I love to just like I would encourage anyone to just sit still and be present and just let him love on you like what Brittany was just saying with that illustration with Ruby just sit and just
Yeah.
be you know just be with him
And that's
um
why you came back, because you were just with you were led by the Spirit. You walk in the Spirit. That's why he says, like, let's walk in the Spirit too, because this is what happens when you and I do a podcast. It's hard to come off of that because
Yeah.
you've sat at the feet of Jesus. You don't want to draw back from that. You don't want to come back into I'm going to read this psalm really quick. This is what's coming to my mind. I'm going to read this and we can probably, unless you have another thing, we can close with this. It's so precious. I'm thinking it goes along with, even though our stories have literally not much in common except for God, it's the same thing. Like the same principle of just letting God lead you and consume you and use you and speak through you. And it's just incredible. There aren't words. Um, okay, hold on. I'm going to find it in a different version that I really like. Give me a second. You know how I do. And then we can. Okay. This is Psalm 63. You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water. I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest foods. With singing lips, my mouth will praise you. And it goes on, but I feel like that just sums up what you and I both have been recently
Yeah.
experiencing with the Lord.
Mm-hmm. I love
Yeah.
that. That's so good.
Okay.
I'm glad you closed with that. That was awesome. What would you like to close us in prayer?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Uh, Heavenly Father, Abba Father, thank you for coming and dying for us to be able to call you that there's no veil between us. There's nothing but just communion that you want with us, just that abiding, just sitting and being still. And Lord, letting you squish us up, letting you love on us as a father. I just pray that everyone who's listening right now, um, would just take the time to be still and to have that new, fresh experience with you as their father. Um, I pray also for this woman that came to Sarah with this desperation in her eyes, God, and seeing you and the glory of you in her eyes reflected. God, I pray for her husband. I pray, Lord, that he will live and not die, that he is being made whole, knit together, and that you would just guide the doctor and the medical people around them, and that they will continue to hear the gospel and follow you all the days of their life. And I pray for these two homes that were declared witches' homes, that they had put those emblems to signify that, God. I pray that the darkness that they walk in, God, that the light would shine clearly and that they would turn to you. Lord, we are so humbled and so grateful to be able to share our testimony like this, Lord. And we just pray that it would go out to the far corners of the earth, and that you would send exactly the people who need to hear it and to watch it, and that it would bring your name glory and honor. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.